My entire life has just been a series of not being able to do things. But you know, that don't feel sorry for me, man. It's fine. I can.
You did kill all those children.
Yeah, obviously. Wait, hang on.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to the podcast that is Screen Flickers.
I can't actually remember what our theme tune sounds like. I was trying to kind of sing along with it as we came in.
That's okay, they would have heard it by now. So.
Okay, fair enough.
So yes, I'm Eddie.
And I am the man who's Joel Jessup.
Yes, he is. And so here is our review of Mortal Kombat, the movie. If you don't know already, we look at the video games that have been adapted into films and review those films just to see, are they good films and how well do they reflect the games.
Strictly in chronological order, of course.
Exactly. So first up is how does it stand alone just as a film, like ignoring the adaptation part. How does it stand as a standalone film?
Well, as a film, obviously, this film is you know, it is a giant pile of cliches. It is a kind of a B movie, sort of a low budget. You know, the actors aren't that brilliant, but it is enjoyable. You know, I enjoyed it, and more than Street Fighter, definitely, because you know, I think we both agree. Yes, welcome to the podcast. It's about two white guys who agree with each other and everything. But at some point, we must fall out over something. But yeah, I think we both agreed that on its own terms, even though it had a smaller budget than Street Fighter, it looks better. Mm-hmm. It looks, you know, like the design is better, the sets are nicer, and you know,
it seems unfair to compare it to Street Fighter, but the comparisons I think are kind of inevitable, because this really, I feel, represents kind of, and I know this is more adaptation, but it represents fighting games in a film better than Street Fighter did, because yes, it had the glorious sets, it had like cool music, it had fight sequences that were kind of decent. Like, yeah. they actually had choreographed fights. Goro looked great. Like, the VFX on Goro looked amazing. Like
the animatronics, the Goro-matronics.
Yeah. Like, I mean, compare him to Blanka in Street Fighter, like miles apart in quality.
Just a dude in makeup. Yeah, no, they could have done an animatronic Blanka. That would have been interesting, wouldn't it? But yeah, I mean, I think they figured with Goro they would like had to go big or go home, so they were like, yeah, let's make this look sort of fairly decent. And he actually talks as well.
Is it time?
I said this, that I'm often disappointed when they have like sort of special effects based characters, often because of, you know, lip sync issues or other things. They very rarely have them talk or have personalities. But the thing about Goro is that he is this kind of big, arrogant kind of fighter, this sort of, you know, he's almost like a wrestler, you know, with his kind of bluster, and so you need him to actually have a voice and talk. Yeah. And so I think they did quite well with that. And
I think I also really appreciate the practical over VFX. Like there's Reptile, who for the most of the film is a VFX character, and that was just kind of underwhelming and crummy looking.
Apparently, the director, Paul Anderson, because we're entering the Paul Anderson era of films now, so we're spending a lot of time with Paul because he loves
all the Resident Evil films.
And so yeah, he apparently didn't know what the character was going to look like. He didn't know what the Reptile character was going to look like when he was shooting the scenes, because a lot of that was done at the last minute. So he literally would just point the camera somewhere, move it around a bit, and then they'd be like, yeah, and they're going to slap that in later. He didn't know what it was going to look like. Right. And so, you know, I think that's probably the lamest part of the film, I think.
So, like, from what I kind of gathered from the plot of the film, it has it kind of focuses on these three characters on Earth. Starts off with Liu Kang, who is being troubled by the memory of his brother being killed by Shang Tsung. So that's Liu Kang's motivation. Then it cuts to to Sonya, who's chasing after Kano, because he...
I think it's Kano because he's Australian, so he's like
Kano, because he killed someone. Like, we don't learn till kind of way later who he killed, but he killed someone enough for Sonya to open fire in the middle of a busy nightclub, and also for the nightclub to not be bothered by that, because they just keep on dancing and playing music regardless. And
later on, when she gets kind of like brute forced into being in this fighting competition, it's a bit like she was like, I totally expected this. I think maybe she's more suited for that sort of thing than actually being a police officer.
She then she stows away on this ship that's sailing off to this Mortal Kombat competition, and then goes ahead and kills this guy, like Kano.
She does, yeah. There's no hesitation. There's his kind of steel face, his kind of half face with the red eye. That's never really even addressed, or
no.
It's like, that's just a thing he's got. And it looks so fake. It could even just be like Kano. Yeah, he wears his Halloween mask. We don't know why.
Yeah, so her motivation is vengeance, but like it's kind of wrapped in this fact that, in kind of classic 90s women cliches, that she is this kind of very stuck up, very cold woman, and she just needs like men to eventually like come around and actually soften and actually become like a decent person. Like, that's an unfortunate thing from the 90s, which
blunt her blade,
which I think we might see perhaps a few more of by the time we get through the rest of these films.
Oh yeah.
And then we have Johnny Cage, who's an actor who is annoyed that people keep calling him fake, which I find to be I struggle to understand why that's a motivation, because like he's upset because he's an actor who does action films within this film. All the tabloids keep saying he's fake, he's not actually doing these fights, and it's like, well, yeah, he's an actor, of course he's not doing, he's acting. They're like, oh, he's a fake. Like, yes, he's a fake, he's an actor.
He even has these pieces of paper with words on. He's not even saying his own words.
Like, what? And so that's his motivation. Like, he's like, no, I need to prove to everyone that I'm real, that I can do this fight for real. And so he goes off to the Mortal Kombat.
I like that.
So, okay. So we got these kind of very vague character plot motivations that drag them all to this competition where they have to fight in a tournament that climb the ranks to... I mean, like...
It's Enter the Dragon, basically. The whole thing is basically, Mortal Kombat was... basically a huge rip off Enter the Dragon with supernatural elements. So they were like, Paul Anderson is like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Yeah. Let's just straight up do that,
And so for the most part of the film, that was kind of cool, because then you see like these characters, some of them obviously with an established past, but you see these characters are being paired up to fight. None of them seem to really die, though. Really, certainly not in a fatality, rip out your spine kind of way. But that's an adaptation thing. But like, you see them paired up. But I found I was getting very bored of the fights.
Yeah.
Very, very bored. Like, it begun quite exciting. Then as the film wore on, especially during the Reptile fight, I was kind of just bored of fighting.
See, I was worried it was just me, because I was kind of tuned out, and I was worried that you were looking over at me, because I'd started looking at pictures of animatronics with that rubber on. I just got a bit of an animatronic binge.
Yeah, I was trying to keep up, and I think you were beginning to tune out, which I think, we were both kind of going through the same thing then. I just found myself getting really underwhelmed by the fights. And I think the thing is, when you're doing a film where you have the kind of the hero's journey, where you have the character trying to like overcome adversity to get to his goal at the end, like he needs to kind of grow and develop as a character throughout. He doesn't seem to learn anything. Like at the very end, like Raiden's like,
I have nothing further to teach you, Liu Kang.
And I'm thinking, what did he actually learn? It's not like, one obvious example would be that at some point during the fight with like Reptile or Shang Tsung or whoever, that he uses a thing that he learnt over the course of the film. Like he learns. I don't know. Maybe
he doesn't even teach him any fighting techniques, does he?
No. Like let's say he's hanging out with his mates around the dinner table, and someone, I don't know, throws in the salt, and he catches it in midair, and he's like, haha, I caught it. You thought it was going to hit me, but I caught it, haha. And then like later in the film, he's like, wait, I got an idea, and he catches something in mid. You know what I mean? Like it's like Big Trouble in Little China, where so at the end of the film, he catches the knife and throws it back, which is something he did earlier in the film, and so it's
they don't do any foreshadowing of their abilities.
It just seems a generic. They fight now.
And are we turning on this film now?
To be honest, I was very underwhelmed by the film. Like I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved I love the sets, and every time I heard that Mortal Kombat theme, I was pumped. Mortal Kombat! I was pumped. Like, that was awesome. And like, some of the VFX were good. Like Reptile, no, that was bad. That was bad 90s VFX. Bad 90s VFX. But everything else was, you know, production-wise, decent. But story-wise, I was just very, very underwhelmed and bored.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's pure cliche, and it's the pure uncut cliche. I think that in a way, the awareness of the fact that it's cliche helps, but it doesn't completely undermine, you know, that like you said, it's one of the most standard heroes. One is hero's journey, one is revenge plotline, which is resolved very simply. She fights him, she beats him, she snaps his neck, and there's no regret, there's no kind of like, what do I do now sort of thing. She's just then conveniently set up to be kidnapped and have her hair and makeup done, apparently by some off-screen
why would they change her clothes when they chain her up on a wall? Like, it's like, no, I mean, she's going to be a prisoner, but not like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, he wants to be a beautician.
Yeah. Do you agree, like, as a film, I mean, production-wise, yes, but kind of story-wise, no?
Definitely, yeah. It's kind of it's a pudding. It's kind of, but you know, it's a pudding with some quite nice decorations, and yeah, it was nice just to kind of look at the sets and things. But I think it rattles along at a feral pace. I guess you know, on its own terms, yeah, it's kind of rubbish.
I'd say that like when they arrive on the island is kind of the best part of the film, because then you kind of get the sense of the scale and the sense of the sets.
Yeah.
And like, there's even a kind of like a kind of very brief fight sequence within that too. That was kind of like the real highlight. That was kind of a moment I was thinking, okay, maybe this film could be something. This could be a worthwhile watch. And the fight with Scorpion and Johnny Cage is great. The bit in the forest, that's really cool because that's, you know, it's an interesting location and like interesting characters.
And in the end, the way he eliminates, you know, there's twists and things. You know, he's like, oh, this guy's got a skull for a face.
Yeah.
Oh no, but now I've got a saw blade. And then he cuts him to bits and he explodes, and you got the photo.
Yeah, so that was really cool.
Fun, you know, lots of cool stuff happens. You know,
but that doesn't happen again. It never gets that kind of fantastical beyond Goro.
It's like I said, that, you know, if you want to see some decent like kung fu, if you want to see some decent martial arts, you go back to the original films, to the actual films that they make in China and stuff in the 80s. You wouldn't necessarily want to watch this film just for that straight up stuff. You want, you know, the Goro stuff, you want the Sub-Zero stuff with the freezing powers, you know, you want the magical stuff which kind of sort of throws it off. And that, you know, the fight sequence with Liu Kang and Sub-Zero is quite fun as well, because it's kind of a bit different. He creates that bubble and then he throws the...
Well, there's the kind of moment where like Katana, like, it becomes this kind of out of nowhere help person.
She just pops her head around the door, doesn't she?
Just kind of leans in and like nods and is like, you know what to do. And he's like, oh, I guess maybe
use the stuff of life.
How did she know that was going to happen? I don't know, but like, there's kind of ropey moments like that. To excuse decent storytelling. It's like, lucky plot device is right there on by my feet.
That's pretty much what she does. Apparently there was more of a romance in the original script between her and Liu Kang, and they just kind of cut it all out, to be honest. And that's probably a good thing, if I'm honest, because I think that even though her character got reduced to a plot device, I think a romance thing would have been even more reductive. I think that she probably had more potential as a character that was just kind of wasted.
Okay, so as an adaptation, what do you think? Personally, I think... Sorry to immediately interrupt after I ask the question.
What do you think? Well...
What do you think, me? Well, me. I think this is a very faithful adaptation, actually. Like, a lot of the kind of fight locations were recreated, the sense of the tournament, the costumes, even kind of the characters themselves and their motivations were quite faithfully reproduced, for better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, in Street Fighter, it was kind of along the lines of cheeky winks or like sort of Easter eggs, like kind of, hey, remember this, hey? Whereas in Mortal Kombat, they're look, this is what you want, straight up. Here's the pit level, here's the monk's temple, here's everything that's in the game. You know, we've recreated it, and you can see people fighting and actually doing some of their finishing moves, and there are like almost no finishing moves in this.
There's no fatalities. That's actually quite remarkable.
I think it's because they were going for like a more it's ridiculous, but they were going for a more of a family cast for this film about people trying to beat each other to death.
Like in lieu of fatalities, it's just
fatalities.
It just drains the soul out of the out of characters,
Your soul is mine.
You get Liu Kang's stamp on
Great deal of
Reptile at the end.
respect to the actor who played Shang Tsung, who kind of, I think, like I said, it's almost a shame that there was never a crossover between Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Not because the Street Fighter film was any good, but because it would have been amazing to see him and M. Bison in a scene together, just literally eating all of the scenery. Your soul is mine. My soul? You could never swallow my soul.
In an all-you-can-eat scene buffet. Who can chew it the fastest? Yes,
an amazing face, just like the world's most constipated man. Yes, you are next.
So yeah, it just seemed weird that there was never any moments where like spines were pulled. I mean, okay, no, actually, no. There was a moment where Sub-Zero blew up a guy who was frozen, and you see their head bobble around. But, But like, it's still not enough. That's not. True. It doesn't. For a Mortal Kombat adaptation, it remarkably held back on the blood and the gore element.
It might have been because there had been, that was a controversial element of Mortal Kombat, which, obviously they rode, they loved that. It gave them massive publicity, but maybe in the film world they thought, we can't really do this for kids in kids' movies, otherwise we're going to get massively criticised and boycotted, so we have to try and dial it back a bit, which, unfortunately that means you fall a bit between two stools. So
in the when they released Mortal Kombat 1 on the Mega Drive, it came with blood as per. And I even think there was an option for it, maybe, but like it came with blood. For the Super Nintendo version, there was no blood.
There was one where it was they turned the blood into sweat,
but then water,
it was really horrifying. Like that's kind of almost more disgusting. People, as you're punching them, are just like pouring giant gallons of sweat off.
Like I ripped this guy's skull out. Oh, it's so sweaty.
What's going on?
But there was like a cheat code you had to type in to get the blood in. Makes me think: is there a version of this film where you have to like press the box art enough times that you get the blood and gore that you want in the film?
Well, you should definitely try. Christopher Lambert, we should just say, he was so sleepy in this film. He was almost like every beginning of the scene they'd just woken him up from a nap, and he was just trying to get through it so he could go back to his nap. And so he almost didn't want to wake up too much.
And for like this character who's meant to be grand and powerful and imposing, and in terms of the role he plays to the rest of the cast, like he's meant to be like this kind of wise sage advisor, he does nothing. In this film,
occasionally he turns up and zaps some people, and then that's kind of it. He
kind of turns up, says his catchphrase,
I don't think so,
and then goes.
He's reminiscent of the Dungeon Master in the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. He turns up and says, he doesn't even say that much cryptic stuff, though, really, does he? He doesn't say a lot of stuff which then later on they're like, oh, that's what he meant. He just basically explains the tournament to them, and then sort of pops up occasionally. He's like, well, keep going, guys.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like that's kind of what I meant by I was getting bored, because there was no sense of no journey, no learning, no growing. It's just they're exactly the same. They don't seem to really overcome anything. Despite talking about how they did, we don't really feel that.
No, I mean it's very much a case of going through the motions. I mean, like I said, I think Paul Anderson is definitely a stronger director than I think. Okay, now here's my theory, which I told you I tried to say to you. I think Paul Anderson, and we'll see if this is borne out, I think that he engages more with the idea of making a video game film than any of the directors we've seen previously. I think a lot of them were thinking we're slumming it, and we're just going to get through this. Or in the case of the guys who directed Super Mario Brothers, they're kind of like, let's twist this so we can basically make our own entirely unrelated film.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Paul Anderson, and this is based on my experience of the films I've seen with him in the Resident Evil films, he's actually seems interested in trying to make a video game adaptation. He's somebody who's clearly actually played these games, and he's like, let's make this work. So we'll see if that bears out over the next, God knows how many of his films we're going to actually see.
I'd say definitely out of the 4 films we've reviewed so far, this is, in terms of adaptation to the video game, the most faithful.
Yep.
But I would still argue that's not the best film we've seen so far, and we've only seen 4.
Oh no. I mean, I think at the moment, of the films we've seen, I'd say I probably still think Double Dragon.
But
in a pure sense, just because it's just a great kind of family fun kind of film. Whereas this film, again, they weren't quite sure. They weren't quite sure how much to try and sort of like subvert the cliches, and so they ended up just kind of running with them, and they weren't quite sure how much gore to have in there, so it's just kind of a bit watered down, a bit sweated down. Hang on, I have another theory.
Oh, there's another theory.
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't have to talk about... Well, no, because I've been thinking about this, the general overthinking of computer game films, and I'm this is another thing we could look at, but my theory about this film is it definitely almost belongs... It's a very 80s feeling film, and I think this is because computer games are often based on film genres, but because computer games are always playing catch-up, they tend to be placed on the genres that have previously been popular. So it's like you saw these, fight films in the 80s, then in the 90s you get to play them. So trying to adapt one of those to the 90s, it's a bit like kind of in the 80s you had, your Schwarzeneggers and your Stallones and your Jean-Claude Van Dammes, these kind of, chunky, muscly guys, and the films are about them, and it's sort of fighting films. The games adapt them, and then when they adapt the games, like in the 90s, that kind of thing wasn't popular, because after Die Hard kind of introduced the idea of a more vulnerable action hero, then the balance had shifted, and you had your more vulnerable, you had your kind of Harrison Ford and people like that, and so that's why this feels kind of retrograde, because it's based on the genres from the previous, and obviously Enter the Dragon, but so it's I'm interested to see if that's borne out, that the reason why maybe video game films aren't successful is because they're just playing catch up.
That's true. Yeah, so if we take like Mortal Kombat, they fill the cast with characters who are clearly meant to be, for the most part, slightly reminiscent of real life movie actors.
Yeah, you got Bruce Lee and Jean-Claude Van Damme and whoever's on your
list. A lot of fight games do that. Like Tekken is well known for prestiging like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan.
Of course, yeah.
And then they in turn adapt the game into a film. So it's kind of like a photocopy of a photocopy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's definitely some merit to that.
Well, thank you very much.
That's a very good theory.
Excellent. I'll put my pipe away now.
So yes, now let's talk about how would we...
Oh, that's it.
How would we make a Mortal Kombat film ourselves? We think we're so smart. How would we do it, Joel?
Okay. I've been recently sort of very interested in the most recent Mortal Kombat game that's come out has been very popular, and they feel that it's brought back a lot of what people like about the original, the games, and like increasingly bizarre and brutal fatalities.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting about them is that they've started showing how you can kind of bring in other film characters, and they sort of fit into the Mortal Kombat films. You've got Freddy and Jason and
Alien and
the
Predator.
Alien. No, exactly, yeah. You could argue whether or not they belong there or not, but people are certainly enjoying their sort of presence. Oh, Leatherface as well.
Yeah.
So I was trying to... This isn't so much of how I would make the film as how I would build up to the film. And here's my idea. That you, go to people who are making genre films, featuring these characters, these strong characters, and you introduce the Mortal Kombat characters one by one in different films.
Right.
So, let's say that they do another Freddy Krueger film, and, you've got Freddy Krueger, he's chasing somebody, and he's trying to fight, and he's about to absorb somebody's soul, and suddenly Shang Tsung is there, and he says, "No, their soul is mine!" And he fights Freddy and something. And then by doing that, you could then kind of introduce the characters into the popular culture. A bit like how they did the Avengers. They had solo films, and then they all added together to one film, but kind of piggybacking on other films. So each of them becomes kind of like the dark horse character in a film, and people are like, "Oh, I want to see more of that guy." I don't know if that would work or not, but it's an idea of a way to build up. And then you kind of have, all these characters, and it kind of gives you an idea of they all come from different genres and different sort of places, and then they all come together in this massive grand tournament.
Right. So yeah, definitely making it more like a cinematic universe where you got all these characters like Mortal Kombat characters and movie villain monsters.
Yeah.
And maybe in each one at the very end they're taken away by Shang Tsung or something like that.
Sure.
And then you get the Mortal Kombat film, which is where all these characters are thrown in.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
To battle one another. That would be awesome.
Thank you.
That would take a long time. They would have to make a new Alien film, a new Predator film, a new Freddy film, and I wouldn't be opposed to those. If they actually made them good. And then
they are, mate. They are. These things are in development, so
build it up to one massive crossover with Mortal Kombat. There's kind of this sense of climbing ranks and butchering one another. They're That would
and
be
it
pretty
would be,
cool.
and it would be interesting because people would be start thinking like, oh, what is the next film that the Mortal Kombat character is going to turn up in? Because you don't tell them, you don't tell people, and people would start going see, you know, like, oh, what's this new Julia Roberts film? You know, she's somebody who's running a
Evan Brockovich 2 featuring Reptile.
That's it. He's just suddenly like, oh my god, the pollutant in the river.
Get out of the river, you!
And see, man, call me Tobias.
Yeah, for me, like, I definitely think, yes, it should probably focus on one character. Like you said, like, there's the vulnerability thing that comes with a character that you feel is kind of grounded and able to be hurt and stuff. And so, like, this was an ensemble film, which did kind of try and keep it small because it had really just Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Sonya Blade with Raiden as their kind of guide.
It wasn't like Street Fighter, because although Street Fighter technically had several main characters, they didn't know how to handle that at all.
No.
And they just kind of became so mithery, you know.
So this definitely felt better and it was smaller, but I'd definitely say this could bear being even smaller, like, because it was kind of like, if you look at the film, it's like, whose film is this? Like, who's the protagonist? Because like, it kind of feels like at points it's Sonya's, because she's the one who's got to get vengeance for a partner, but then she kind of does that and she's kind of done.
That's it. I
And
think
then
it's supposed to be Liu Kang's film.
It is kind of Liu Kang's
because it opens
film.
with his dream, his nightmare.
But then you got Johnny Cage, who's just kind of also there. It's like, I feel like the film would have done better if it focused solely on Liu Kang.
Yeah.
And like it followed his journey. Like he could meet Sonya, or he could meet Johnny, and Johnny could be that kind of quippy, like comic relief character. And
I think the guy who played Johnny did a pretty good job. Considering,
he did fine.
You know,
he did fine.
Yeah.
But then you get this sense of like that you kind of focus on one character and you build up this tournament. Then it gets to like the higher levels of the tournament, and then he has to fight Johnny Cage.
Yeah.
And it's like, this person, we built a relationship
They never
over.
did that. They never did that. That's funny, isn't it? Because it's like that is, you know, that is a brilliant sort of element of it, which they never really covered.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the film The Quick and the Dead?
No.
That's a Sam Raimi film about a gunfighting competition.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing. It's like these gunfighters, they all sign up to it and they all have their own reasons to do it. It is almost like an adaptation of like a beat-em-up game that never existed.
Right.
And so one by one, as they're eliminated, people start becoming aware they're going to have to fight each other.
Yeah. And then so
I recommend Quick and the Dead. So that tension is great.
That would be great. So especially, and like the if they all have to convene in this dining room, which we see at the beginning of the film, and like you just see it getting smaller and smaller in numbers and stuff. Like, because it's Mortal Kombat. Like, they don't come back alive. Like, they have to kill each other. Like, that. I mean, I haven't seen Hunger Games, but I guess that's kind of similar.
Yeah.
Like that kind of sense of giant sport, but like also killing. So that would give this film something that was missing, was that sense of journey, that kind of that growth and that purpose, and that kind of more like giving the ending fights a bit more of an emotional tension.
Yeah.
Which it just didn't have. It was just another fight by the end.
Well, I guess when we see the future films, we will actually be able to see if they kind of brought that in, or if they just continue to kind of balls it up.
Exactly, yeah, because our next film is going to be the sequel to this film, which is Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
That's right.
Which I haven't seen. I did see this film when I was much younger, and I'd forgotten most of it apart from the forest fight between Johnny and Scorpion, but the sequel I never saw at all.
I think I might have seen bits of it, like, you know, in a fugue state.
Right. So now we get to our scoring, and I recommend, now usually when we do our scoring we give it an out of 5 thing from the film.
Yes.
But I'm going to suggest for this one we make it out of 5, but different pronunciations of Raiden or Raiden or however you want to say it. So Joel, how many do you give it?
I give it 3 out of 5 Roidens. Roidens. It's the Irish.
Okay.
Raiden.
I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 Roylans.
Royland. My name's Royland. I'm Roiden's brother.
Yeah, I was bored. I was very bored by this film. This isn't one I'd want to see again. Like, I was kind of like, okay, I'm done. Like, okay, sure. I appreciate the production side of things, but in terms of the story and the rest, nah.
Well, I thought it was fun. I'd watch it again. You know, I'd not immediately, But yeah, no, I'm up for it.
See? We disagreed.
We actually disagreed.
We disagreed.
Oh, thank God. Oh, man. And now we'll talk about crisps and sandwiches.
Oh, I love crisps and sandwiches.
Hey, you liar.
Oh, I know you crisps in sandwiches?
Oh.
No, crisps and sandwiches I like, but not crisps in sandwiches, no.
It's the crisp inside the sandwich is the secret. That's
No, you're wrong.
It's like eating a sandwich with bones.
No,
that's what
you're wrong. And if you keep pushing this agenda, I'm going to have to kill you, Mortal Kombat
this
style.
podcast is cancelled. Mortal Kombat!
Crisp and sandwich! Okay, bye!
Bye!